Okay, Sam, welcome to the AMMACH project. My name is Miles. I'm standing in for Joanne Summerscales, who's away on assignment right now. So Sam has come down to the AMMACH facilities for telling us a series of stories which are very, very relevant to the kind of things which other people have been saying in the AMMACH and also the BASIS series of investigative reports. So Sam, can you introduce us to who you are and what brings you to the AMMACH project? Okay,
my name's Sam. Basically, a couple of years ago, I was speaking to somebody who actually recommended that I should speak to you regarding some experiences I had, well, been ongoing all my life, basically, but particularly in 8 years while I was married to a member of the Spanish military. During my investigations after my experiences during the marriage, I was put in touch also with Matt Todd and James Casbolt. I haven't actually spoken face for James, but I have actually sort of spoken to him online and stuff.
Now, this is important because Matt Todd is probably the first one to come up in this general area as a super soldier and mind control and so forth. After, of course, the Barry King revelations all those 15, 17 years ago. So tell us more. Well,
with Matt, there's a friend of mine over in the Isle of Man who actually recommended me speaking to you, and also he actually put me in touch with Matt. He set up a meeting for me to go and see Matt. When I went to see Matt himself, I was going through a period of awareness that something had been very, very wrong. There was something that had been happening on a very quite violent level, but also a great deal of denial. So when I actually went to see Matt, it was a brilliant clarification for me, actually, that I wasn't going mad. And a lot of the experience I was having was, to be quite honest, I thought I was going nuts, totally and utterly nuts. I was.
Now, what kinds of experiences? Let's tie things down.
Well, it started off during the marriage. I started waking up with little bruises. I started.
Now, you were married to a military person. Man.
Now, this is strange. I was under the impression where I married him that he was an infantry sergeant, just a simple little run-of-the-mill military guy, you know. I will say that I actually have, and I have had all my life, a great fear of military, of doctors, of dentists. Anybody in any form of uniform actually really does freak me out. I go into panics. I'm the sort of person who's terrified of needles. I hated guns, even though I can use a weapon myself. I was taught as a child to use a weapon.
You're talking about a gun?
Yeah.
A rifle? Or
rifles, yeah. Well, air rifles, and because we used to live on a farm, and there was a guy who used to come hunting, and he taught me how to use the rifles and stuff. And my ex-husband actually taught me how to use.
And what sort of age was this?
8 or 9.
And was this? Were you living in the country at the time?
Yeah, in Lincolnshire.
Right.
Yeah, up in Lincolnshire.
So I mean, that's not unusual, is it?
I don't think everyone at the age of 8 or 9 actually uses air rifles and can shoot rabbits. But I mean, at the age of 9, 10, my brother and I had air pistols that we could use, and we were good shots. I mean, no, maybe it isn't. I've never thought about it actually. You know.
But so, you stressed before we started that about the military connection.
Yeah.
So just bring us from there.
With the marriage, yes. I met my husband through a series of coincidences in the year 2000. After the relationship was a whirlwind romance. Within 2 weeks, he had proposed to me.
What were the circumstances which you had...
Well, I was actually walking the Camino de Santiago, the pilgrimage across northern Spain.
Now, explain what that means to people who don't know what that
is. The pilgrimage is a path that actually apparently goes from Rome, but it's actually it's believed to be an old pagan walk. They call it the Milky Way. It's a power walk across northern Spain. I read about it in Paulo Coelho's book, The Pilgrimage, just after I arrived in Spain after having had a nervous breakdown. And I was so taken with this, as in I really believed it was some way of me helping to heal myself, that I did this walk with my mother and various other people, that I actually set out in military precision, that we had to be particular places at particular times. And lo and behold, my husband-to-be was walking those particular times in those particular places. And everywhere we went, we met up with him. And let's say within 2 weeks, he'd proposed to me. I fell head over heels in love. I thought that was it. Bang. And
so he swept you off your feet.
He did. Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was great. And I was madly in love, or I thought I was madly in love. And in the September, that was in the May, in the September, I moved to Galicia.
Yeah.
There were things that weren't quite right, but I thought it was down to my own paranoia and fears, etc. And very controlling. He was extremely controlling, but not on what I did, but things. For instance, if I didn't drink my coffee, he would have a fit of me wasting coffee. You know, just stupid things, but very explosive. But I thought, well, he's Latin. Anyway,
did you blame it just on a Latin temperament?
Yeah, I blamed it on me and the Latin temperament.
So it was your fault.
I thought it was my fault. Yeah, because I felt that I was actually invading his space. It was quite strange. He was adamant that he wanted me there, but I always, in a way, felt that I was in his space. But anyway, then the bruises. And don't get me wrong, he was absolutely brilliant to me. Very, very beautiful, you know, but he had this very controlling side and very explosive nature. And it was at times.
Do you think that was
people.
Just the Latin nature? I mean,
I'm not so sure now. No, I was at the time. At the time, I was thinking, well, it's got to be Latin nature. But it's the stupid things like he used to make a cafeteria coffee. What was left over used to go into a little jug, and then 2 or 3 days later, that jug would be boiled up in the morning for the coffee. Well, one morning there was actually mould on the top of it, and I refused to drink it, and he went absolutely, totally nuts about me wasting the coffee, and totally off the deep end. I was sat there thinking, this is really quite strange. And I ended up refusing to drink coffee anyway, because I started getting heart palpitations and dizzy fits and stuff. And I assume
that's maybe too much caffeine.
That's it. I decided it was too much caffeine, so I decided not to have the coffee, so it wasn't an issue anymore. It just came to other parts of my diet. For instance, the fact I was vegetarian, I had a hard problem with that. But quite controlling. But I thought that, you know, he's military, Spanish, you know, that's the way it was. Anyway, I started waking up in the morning with little bruises, tops of my arms, tops of my legs, particularly on the right side. And I couldn't work it out. I knew it wasn't from him because he was never rough. And I couldn't work out how I could be so clumsy as to be catching myself on the inside of the arm or the leg. You know, it was just really...
Can you describe these marks?
Like little finger bruises. You know, if somebody had held your... Just little ones, not big bruises. It wasn't like big bruises. They were like little finger marks at the top of the arm. Only 2, 3 at a time, but they were there. And they wouldn't be there in the morning, and sprained wrists or a sprained ankle. And then I started getting the headaches, really bad headaches, and not being able to focus, serious loss of memory. I still have an ongoing issue with my memory, but my memory got so bad at one stage that I would go walking in the small town where we lived and I'd get lost, even having lived there for 4 or 5 years. I lived a total of 8 years in this place, and even by the time I left, I would still get lost. I used to have blinding headaches, wake up with nausea, and it was like having a severe hangover, but I mean the worst possible hangover. It was
a dragging feeling, your limbs
tired, heavy. I mean, I actually did go through a stage of jokingly asking if he'd been beating me up in the middle of the night, because I'd wake up in the morning feeling as if I'd done 10 rounds with Mike Tyson rather. My body felt bruised, but apart from the little bruises and the odd sprained wrists, you know, the headaches, nausea, and everything, there wasn't actually any physical damage until later on. And then I'd get what looked like burn marks. Now, the one that I remember most vividly was one I had on the inside of the wrist here. and it was like a circle and a triangle. And I couldn't work out, it was such a distinct pattern. It wasn't as if I could have possibly have put it on the oven. I mean, I had noticed I've been going through a period of being a little clumsy and getting burns, or I thought I was being clumsy and getting burn marks. But this was like a distinct pattern that was on the inside of the wrist. And I wasn't sure if it was a burn or a rash, but it didn't hurt and it didn't itch. It was just this raised, burned-looking piece of skin that faded after a couple of weeks. I actually...
Did you get any photographs of any of this?
No, the only thing I've actually got evidence left on me are the puncture holes in my navel, where I actually have scars that are still visible.
But this was happening at a time when you didn't have cell phone cameras and things.
I didn't know what was going on. I actually thought it was me going mad, hurting myself somehow. You know, me just being totally forgetful. At this stage, I used to forget things. I didn't even know what day it was half the time. I mean, I was living in Spain. You forget speaking Spanish. I couldn't even speak English half the time. I was trying to form a sentence or talk to somebody, and I couldn't. It was as if somebody had been in my head with a blender. It was, you know, it's hard to explain. It was like having the brain smashed all the time. Headaches, nausea, you know, sickness. It was really, yeah, it was not nice feelings. And I used to also have periods where I'd be smelling blood, even though I was aware that I had no wounds that would leave blood, and it wasn't sort of like the time of the month where you might smell blood. I'd just be smelling blood all the time. It'd go on for 2 or 3 days. I'd just be smelling blood. It felt as if I had blood all over me. And that would really coincide. At that time, I would have the serious sickness, the really bad nausea, and the headaches, and the forgetting, and sprains and bruises and things.
So could you describe what those sort of marks were then?
Well, I don't know. I said there was the bruises, the burn marks, sprains, but also I said I woke up one morning, and this, to me, actually is the one thing that keeps me believing that I'm sane, that I haven't actually lost the plot. It was the morning I woke up and I had 2 puncture holes in my navel, and they were weeping yellow fluid. And I remember getting up and I showed Manu that, and he was totally disinterested. He didn't want to know.
What sort of time period are we dealing with now? I mean, how many years ago?
This would probably been about 6 years ago. It was getting towards the end of the marriage. Because, I mean, the actual damage... Well, I don't know if the damage was getting more pronounced or whether it was a case of I was beginning to notice it, because I was also beginning to feel uneasy on lots of other levels. I mean, I couldn't understand... Like, I'm a healer. I'm a psychic. My role
now, this
in
is
the
a
last
major.
12
This
years,
is a major part of your whole persona. Can we
Yes.
just leave that out? Or
Okay.
as a healer,
Yes.
when did all that start happening? And
Well, I've been involved in healing since a child. My mother was a dietary therapist and a herbalist. At the age of 8, I used to do hands-on healing for people. I remember about the age of 11, 12, Mum taking me to Tai Chi and, you know, working with energy and stuff. At the age of 12, my brother actually died on me. My mother was away on a course, and he had a high temperature, went up to 104. Our doctor wouldn't come out, so I was left treating him, and he actually stopped breathing. Now, he subsequently told my mother that it was me that brought him back, that he saw the white light, he'd gone, and that it was me that had brought him back again. So healing is something I've always done, I've always known. I mean, it's my friends as a child, I used to be called the witch. You know, children were either really loved me or they were scared to death of me. And as a child, I was known to move things, be able to read people's minds, finish sentences, and do the healing. That was who I was. Anyway, I said with the healing, when I met my husband, I had just been doing the Reiki. I'd just become a Reiki master, and
So you'd met your husband and then you became the Reiki
Well,
master?
it was going on at the same time. It was going on at the same time because I had started training in the Reiki just before I'd met him. And then the last one that I did when I actually became a Reiki master was literally just before I moved in with him permanently. He knew this at the time? Yeah, he knew what I did. He used to tell people that I was psychic. He was very proud of the fact that I was psychic. He used to tell people I was a healer. He was very proud that I was a healer. He wouldn't let me do it on him.
Was this in Spain?
Yeah, in Spain, yes.
So how did they deal with that? Did they deal with that in an open-minded kind of way? Or?
Well, in Galicia, it's very witch country. In Galicia, the Catholic Church, they have the little churches where you have the statues of the saints, and a lot of them, it's sympathetic magic. You go to see the saint, you take a candle of the body part that needs healing, you light the candle, offer it to the saint and say, I need healing for this, or my grandmother needs healing for this. They, in Galicia, they will curse their grandmother for...
Sorry, could you run that again about the area that you lived in?
It was in Galicia, northern Spain.
Right. So, is that near Basque Country?
No, it's the opposite side, just above Portugal.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you, having a husband who willingly told people that, that you had these talents.
Yeah.
How did that work in terms of the rest of the people?
Fine. Because in Galicia, being a little bit witchy and cookie doesn't matter. Because
Good.
they were all a bit witchy and cookie.
So this didn't affect you as a person?
No, it used to. Actually, to be quite honest, until I went to Galicia, I was very uncomfortable. I would not talk about what I did or could do because people found me very frightening. As a child, I used to be called the witch, as I said. I remember a very close friend of mine, my best friend at primary school, used to tell people that I'd move things. Now, I only remember controlling items once, it was with dice. I remember during a board game, my mother had really pissed me off because she was winning and she was terrorising my poor younger brother who was in tears. So I decided to teach her a lesson, so I took control of the dice and I made her lose the game.
So this was spontaneous.
Yeah, this was spontaneous.
I mean, but you were in control of the dice.
I was in control of the dice. It wasn't. Yeah. No. I was in control of the dice. I thought what numbers I wanted the dice to roll, and that's what the dice rolled. But I didn't. It wasn't.
You actually told the dice what numbers to roll to?
I looked at the dice, and she was using 2 dice, and I would decide I would count how many she needed to lose on that game. Because it was a game a friend had made up, and every so often it was like Snakes and Ladders, you go down and get eaten by the snake, but it was called Truckers, and there were skulls and crossbones, and you'd lose your lorry. So I would actually mentally count up where the next pitfall was, and I would will the dice to do that, so she would lose. And she knows I did it because I did it openly. Because she was being horrible to my brother, and it wasn't on. You don't make my little brother cry. He was only 11. And he was crying because he was losing the game. It was really nasty. But I don't remember doing it any other time. But my best friend at school was absolutely adamant. Incidentally, my best friend actually died around the age of 30. She'd had anorexia and she ended up with a drug overdose in hospital on pharmaceutical drugs. And she died around the age of 30.
What was the disease? Anorexia?
She had anorexia. She had anorexia. She basically starved herself to death and killed herself with pharmaceutical drugs before she was around the age of 30.
What do you feel was the reason for that?
My best friend was very psychic as well. She used to see her grandmother. She used to see cats and all the rest of it. And her family were very, very religious. I remember her mother telling me I was a liar when I told her about my experiences in the Pentecostal church because I saw demons being thrown out and stuff.
Now, what was that experience? Could you go into that?
I was used to go to the Pentecostal and the Evangelical church, the big churches. This is quite a big subject, actually. They used to cast out demons and stuff. It was really full-on hallelujah and stuff.
I mean, from your point of view, did they actually cast out demons?
Yes, they did. They did. When you see a woman writhing around on the floor, screaming and cursing and talking in other tongues, and then suddenly becoming still and quiet, something's changed. I was actually on 2 occasions during my interaction with the evangelical church, I had full body possessions. I had no conscious memory. I was stood up and I gave messages on 2 occasions at the age of 12, 13. It was about...
Now, that some people would call that channeling.
Yeah,
or is it the same
I have
thing?
It was possession because I have no memory. I was told to stand up, and the first time it happened, I remember vividly, I did not want to stand up. I just remember being bodily stood up, and I remember nothing else. And the second time it happened, I didn't resist, but I have no memory whatsoever about what happened. And my mother couldn't tell me what I said because she was so frightened because of the way I was behaving. She was like, you know, she was frightened that I was going to make a fool of myself, but I wasn't even there. I was not aware at all of what was going on.
Okay, Sam, so we've established now that you've married and your husband is saying in Spain that you have got healing abilities and things. So what does that mean in terms of your personal life and the rest of your friends? Because you mentioned this is an okay thing for where you are.
To be honest, I didn't really have that many friends. I'm not really a friend person. I might have 1 or 2 friends at a time, and that's it. So most of my contacts were actually my husband's contacts, who are military personnel. And as I was very uncomfortable in the military environment, they were not relationships I cultivated.
So you were married to a military man. What sort of status of military person are we talking about here?
He was a staff sergeant. I was brought up in Britain. Well, yeah, I was brought up in Britain. I spent a little bit of time in France, but I was brought up in Britain. So obviously how things were in Spain wasn't really within my consciousness. As I said before, I am not the sort of person who's comfortable with military personnel. I'm not comfortable with anyone in a uniform. I used to refuse going to the dentist, refuse going to the doctor, which was lucky in a way because my mother was an alternative practitioner anyway.
What's the military connection got to do with not going to the dentist or doctor?
Well, I didn't like people in uniforms, period. I don't like uniform people. They make me very uncomfortable. And military with their weapons, etc., the whole mindset, etc., just makes me very, very uncomfortable. I also have a perception of military being very rigid, which doesn't really flow with the way that I personally would prefer to live. So actually it was quite bizarre me marrying a military member of the military, but I said, well, that's what happened. That's where I was. I said with regards to his friends, etc., they accepted me as Sammy, his wife. They all thought I was charming and lovely and a very good housewife. I was a model housewife.
Well, you seem to fit in very well, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm quite lucky because I do tend to get on with people very easily. I don't feel that I'm not comfortable with groups of people. I don't have many friends, but I don't actually have a problem fitting in with people if I have to. You know, I can adapt as necessary if needed.
So in terms of other people's typical marriages, I mean, were there any other English people there?
No.
You were the only English person?
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
it's not
I had
a
no
place
English friends
where there's tourists or anything like that?
No, very few. And the tourists would tend to be European anyway.
You mean French and
French,
German?
a lot of French and German, yeah. But so Galicia is a little more upmarket, say, than the Costa del Sol, the Costa Brava. Most of the people didn't speak English either, which means and it's Galician, which means it's a crash. I had a bit of a crash course in politics as well, because Galicia they've got a terrorist organisation similar to ETA called GRAPE, and there were little spates from time to time. Galicia's looking for autonomy in the same kind of way as Basque, but not quite as forcefully. So there's quite a lot of political activity there. They've got their own language, etc.
Yeah. So your husband would have been actually on proper military service and
Yes.
could go at any time?
Yes. However, whereas in England, the majority of the ones in active service are abroad all the time. In Spain, it doesn't actually work that way. They go away for 4 to 6 months, and then usually they're back home for another 6 months, a year, etc. In the time that I was with him, which was 8 years, he was only away once, and that was actually the first lot out to Iraq. He was, yeah.
So this was just basically down to politics, or because of his...
Well, this is a bit strange thing. He spoke English, so he actually had a very high security clearance. Now he spoke English, so he had a high... Yeah, apparently, because having somebody who spoke English was very, very useful to send out to UN exercises on missions that involved the UN troops, for example, Afghanistan, Kosovo, Bosnia, Iraq, etc. He was a blue helmet.
That's a blue helmet. Just means he's United Nations.
Yeah. That I say he was a blue helmet, as in he'd work regularly with the United Nations, and there were several things he told me about his military career that I had no reason to doubt. For instance, I mean, I saw paperwork, photographs, etc., evidence to back up what he told me. And unless they do things very, very differently in Spain than they do in Britain, I have been assured by members of the forces here in the UK it's not possible what he told me unless he was actually espionage.
Right. Now, what did he tell you?
Well, for instance, he told me that and I know this was for a fact because I saw the documented evidence, he was an independent observer in Kosovo before the war broke out, and he was actually evacuated. Now, I have been assured that there was no way a military personnel would be chosen as an independent observer. They would not go into place like Kosovo out of uniform, because that would be illegal. It would only be in the instance of being, espionage or intelligence gathering.
So let's just get clear here. Before you got married, you had a nervous breakdown. What led up to that nervous breakdown?
Lots of things. As a child, I'd been pretty abused. So I would say I was pretty damaged.
What level of abuse?
Not actual rape, not incest or rape, but sexual abuse, yeah. The earliest actual clear memories I have was from about the ages of 8 years old. And there were 2 instances that occurred within the same year. Now, through the work I've been doing on myself to actually try and get to the bottom of what's been happened to me, with regards to my marriage, etc., 2 other instances of sexual abuse came to light. The first one starting when I was 2.5.
Now, is it easy for you to recall this? Do you want to do this?
Well, it actually, what I remembered was in the form of a dream, which could be questionable, but I actually ran the contents of the dream, apart from the actual abuse part, but the person, the situation, town, everything. I ran it past my father, and he confirmed that what I was seeing was a street in Plymouth that was going up the hill to where my grandparents used to live, and they used to have a flat above some garages. And this is what I saw in the dream. I saw myself being carried. I was being carried by a man in a mustard cardigan, a balding head, up the street, and he smelt of cigars and stuff, and I didn't like him. His energy made me feel very uncomfortable.
He smelt of what?
Cigars.
Cigars.
He didn't smell nice, and I didn't like his energy. And he was taking me up, and I knew I was going to this place, this flat above these shops. And then in the dream, he was touching me inappropriately, but the feeling I was getting was he didn't care what I was. I could be a boy, girl, toy, whatever, but he was poking. But it's hard to think, because I was very aware. I did not know what was happening. It was what I was feeling, what was coming off this person. I was really wrong. So I didn't tell my father that part that actually took place in the flat, but I described to him the street, the man, and he said that was my grandfather, and that when I was about 2.5, we went to visit them, because at the time, this was in Plymouth and we lived in Wales. And we actually did go to visit them at the time, at the age when I was in this dream. So the chances are, and it was really because it brought up a lot of pain, but I also know that my uncle was abused by my grandfather. I believe my father was abused by my uncle. That was something my mother related to me later on to try and explain my father's behaviour towards me. That my father's still in denial over, but...
So this is... this led to your breakdown?
This gradually, yes, because so I remember the age of 8, I started suffering from depression. I remember the age of 8, me and my brother started wanting to run away. The pair of us continuously making plans to run away because we didn't want to be there anymore. Because my father was a very angry man, very, very violent. Not as in beating, but very psychologically, emotionally violent. He would hit us. He hit us a lot. I mean, I've got a lovely reflex. If you move too fast, I'd duck because, you know, he'd come home, he'd be in the bad mood, and he'd be smack you across the room. They got divorced when I was about 10 and 11. I remember my brother actually saying, he actually said to my mother, when's that horrible man going to go away and leave us alone? We'll be happy then. Because he made our life so miserable. But there was also a series of other things leading up to it, as in I'd started drinking about the age of 12, 13.
I mean, how did your parents allow you to do that?
My mother didn't know. My father had already gone. My mother was trying to play mother and father. She was out working late at night, and I used to go to the drinks cabinet and just take little nips out of everything and fill out a large glass of little nips of things to try and just numb out, because I didn't want to. So in
other words, you were taking a little bit out of each bottle, so it didn't look as if you were taking...
Exactly, because I didn't want her to know.
Yeah.
And then things deteriorated after, so we were involved with the evangelical church, and I actually started going through a bad stage after that because I was convinced I was going to end up going to hell. I mean, it was really, because I've been channeling, and like I say, had things taking over my body. You know, it's frightening. I'm sorry, but it is frightening. If you don't know what's going on, nobody's explaining to you what's going on. It's a very frightening experience. Around that time, we were also, my brother was in trauma. He was lying, feeding things, all the rest of it. Bedwetting. He was really in quite a bad way, and he started. We started seeing UFOs. That was about the age of 9. Yeah.
So the UFO thing came in.
Yeah, when I was about 9, 10. It was just before my father left. Yeah, I remember. Well, I remember my brother seeing them because he slept on the top bunk and I slept on the bottom in our little bedroom, because we were in caravans at the time on 6.5 acres. It was an old WAF camp in Lincolnshire. And he used to see them out over in the back field. And we'd go out and he'd see, you'll see, where he said, it was here, I saw something coming down here. And he'd see not just one or two, he'd see 2 or 3 things.
Which camp was this?
This is in a little place called Great Steeping. It was an old WAF camp.
That's Women's Air Force?
Yeah, it was used during the Second World War. We had big bomb shelters there. It's like a wilderness. It was incredible, actually.
Where is this?
In Lincolnshire. Great Steeping, just outside Spilsby. Yeah, it was quite an incredible piece of land in itself. But we'd go out to the backfield. We had horses. We had Arab horses, actually. Chickens, ducks, all sorts of things. So this is where I learnt to shoot, in the backfield. But we'd go out, and my brother would be, well, it was here I saw it come down. And there would be scorch marks and stuff, you see. But even I remember the time looking and thinking, no, this can't be true, this can't be true, this can't be true. And I said to my brother recently about this, he said, well, no, it was you that saw them first. And I was like, no, it was you. But, neither of us got consistent memories.
So what did you see?
Well, he used to see lights. He claims it was me that saw the lights. But there were lights used to come in at night. After, when it was early hours in the morning, they used to wake us up. And then, so when we went out at dusk...
Now, who used to wake you up?
The lights did. The lights used
Why would lights wake you up?
Because...
What sort of noise would that have?
Well, it wasn't the noise, it was the light coming in. Because the lights would come in through the bedroom window.
So these are really bright lights?
Yeah, very bright lights.
And big?
Bright orange lights, yeah, big, bright orange lights coming down in the backfield. That's what he saw. Now,
How
I
many?
can't remember seeing it, but he swears that I actually saw them.
How many lights?
Well, he would say there would be 2 or 3 different things coming in. I mean, I do remember when we were 15, we used to see discs and stuff from the back garden of another house we moved in. And I remember the 3 of us, me, my mother and my brother, standing out in the back garden and actually seeing a disc silhouetted one night. Can
you describe the disc?
Yeah, it was a disc and it had like a band of lights. And it was silhouetted. It was quite a cloudless night. So you could, and there was quite a lot of moonlight, and it was silhouetted and you could see the lights. Well, I've always believed it was my brother saw them first. We used to watch them together, but my brother was absolutely convinced it was me that saw them first. Anyway, it's immaterial. We used to see lights coming down into the backfield. At the time we were living in caravans, and the lights used to shine through the bedroom window onto the bunks where we slept. It was actually around that time I started developing another little habit that I've only just broken, and that's I used to lie under the covers, terrified, to the extent of not even wanting to breathe, because I was certain that there was something in the room, and if they knew I was conscious, if they knew that I was there, then they would hurt me.
Now, who is they?
I have no idea. I really have no idea at all. But I remember, they say it was from about the ages of 9, because I remember it started in that caravan, in that bedroom. I used to hide under the covers, and I did it actually up until after the divorce. If I'd wake up in the night and I'd be convinced something was stood there, and I'd
this
just
is
be
basically most of your childhood and the bulk
most
of
my
your
life. Yeah. So
what made it stop after your divorce?
I would assume, this is an assumption, I would assume that it must have come out with some of the trauma I released during point holding and ayahuasca. Now,
what's that again? Point holding?
Point holding is body electronics.
Right, now explain what that is.
It's a form of kahuna shaman healing. And
Kahuna is...
The kahuna shamans from Hawaii.
Hawaii, yeah.
Okay, so it's a shamanistic process where you run energy through particular points in the body that correspond with the organs and the glandular system.
Is this any similarity to acupuncture?
In a way, yes, but what it does, it actually goes deeper, as it actually breaks down the crystals that are formed within the DNA. Because memories and trauma produce patterns, so they can actually lodge as part of the DNA, and you actually become genetically imprinted with a pattern of behaviour.
So that's when genetic memory comes into being.
It can come down whole family lines. You can inherit it, and the whole process of point holding is to actually release that pattern. So obviously you bring in the trauma up through the stages of emotional freedom, shall we say, down from the unconscious stage into the apathy, up into fear, grief, pain, anger, up until you've actually released the whole range of the emotions associated to the trauma, and then the pattern goes.
So is that anything to do with emotional freedom technique?
Not really, no. It's not tapping. It actually, it works on a genetic level. So, I actually help people heal bone breaks and stuff with it. Some of the stories I've heard from other people with the results they've had from it are nothing short of miraculous. Because it's literally clearing.
And how do you know it's gone? Is there any way of checking your genetics?
I don't know. It's your behaviour changes. There are one story of a black guy who actually came and his eyes went from brown to blue. Actually,
wow.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the organiser of the course was accused of actually trying to change the son to a white man by the guy's parents. But it has actually, changing of eye colour is quite normal, because through the processes of iridology, you can actually check the body's health through the iris of the eye, and the different specks and colours do actually show weaknesses within the organs. They can show potential hot spots, where you might have a problem with the heart. And through releasing this, the irises will actually start changing colour. So yes, you can actually see it happening.
And is that a temporary thing, or
no? It's permanent, unless you obviously do something to actually reactivate the same kind of rubbish again, which is unlikely. Mind you, having said that, I've heard stories of people who wanted to lose drinking habits, etc. They got rid of all these they went through 2 weeks of fantastic healing, got rid of all this rubbish, and then the next time they were seen, they were in a nightclub getting as drunk and pulling as many women as they can, because they couldn't.
That particular part of the personality hadn't got.
Yeah, they couldn't let go of that, because at the end of the day, it is intention as well. And if you're not ready to let go, you won't.
Well, getting back to your early UFO events, can you bring us forward as to any other events and times that you've experienced these kind of things?
Well, when I was 15, we did see the disc in the back garden.
Now, what is the disc?
The disc. It was a disc. It was in the sky. We used to go out regularly. My brother, myself, and 2 friends, and one of which is also dead. He committed suicide. We used to go out in the back garden looking for UFOs. And actually, from the ages of about 9 onwards, my brother and I were absolutely obsessed with UFOs. So
you weren't hiding under the blankets anymore. You now wanted to see them.
Yeah, we used to see them. I mean, I don't know what I was hiding under the blankets from. I wasn't scared of UFOs. I was scared of something that used to come into my bedroom at night. And somehow I wasn't associating the two. Yeah. So, subconsciously I was.
So what is the difference between the UFO and what others would associate would be an alien from a UFO?
I really don't know, to be quite honest. I mean, I hadn't even picked this up myself until, just talking to you now. Because I had another experience where I did see an alien in my room when I was in my late 20s. This was just before the breakdown. And actually that day...
What would you call an alien?
Well, I'm assuming it's an alien because it was about 4.5 foot, large eyes, grey. It wasn't clear because it was in my bedroom. It was at night, but I woke up in the night. I'd heard somebody walking in the hallway, and it had woken me up, and I saw something. This being stood at the end of the bed, but then I went out cold again.
Now, can you remember what that being was? Can you describe that
in detail? It looked like a small grey. Your typical small grey.
Now, what would you call a typical small grey?
About 5 foot. 4.5, sorry. Skinny, greyish skin, big eyes.
What kind of eyes? Any features of the face, nose? What about hands?
No, it was indistinct. I didn't see the hands. It was just stood there. Well, so at the end of the bed, at the time I had a mattress on the floor, but it was stood there at the side of the mattress.
I mean, were they almond horizontal eyes?
They were like large almond eyes.
Did they point up to each side, or?
No, they were across. They weren't pointing up. They were.
And what happened? Can you remember what happened with that incident?
I just went out cold after that. I remember I woke up, I saw it, and I don't remember anything else. But I didn't actually experience fear there. I don't. So far, it is strange because I said the actual experience of hiding under the blanket and the fear I used to have coincided with the first viewings my brother and I had of the UFOs, the first contacts we've ever had. But I had no fear. In fact, I was quite happy to go out and looking for them. I didn't actually have any fear of the spacecraft, but I was afraid.
Did you see any sightings?
Yeah, we saw the one in the garden. We used to see lights and stuff moving around, which didn't actually correspond with
meteors or satellites.
Yeah, they didn't correspond with meteor or satellite or planes or stuff. Unusual lights, because we used to do as a group, and we used to check with each other. Okay, what do you think that is? And we used to go through all the logical explanations for it. I mean, it's not a case of we would. We were wanting to see it. We were always looking for a logical explanation for anything we saw.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way we did it.
So what was this disc like?
Well, it was... It was round. Sorry to say, round, and it had like a wide band and it had lights.
I mean, you've seen a UFO. It's a disc. Gosh.
Well, it's not the classic disc with the thin edges. It actually had like a wide band around it where the lights were.
What kind of lights? Were they small lights, LED lights, moving? Give us some description.
No, they were fixed. They were lights, largish lights. I mean, it was in the sky. I would just say it was probably the same height as your regular aircraft, your regular military type aircraft, because at that time there's a lot of RAF bases in Lincolnshire. So it was flying at about the same height as those. So you could see it quite clear. I mean, you can see the RAF planes. Yeah. You know, you can just sort of see every bit of them when they're going over. It was at night, but it was well silhouetted. There was the moonlight. It showed up as a disc, had a wide... It wasn't sort of narrow off to the edge. It was...
Could you furnish us with a drawing of that?
Yeah,
we could use later.
Yeah,
we could do that later.
I'd do that, yeah.
Yeah. So, any kind of memory of what happened, or
no?
How close did this come? I mean, for instance,
it was over.
If you held your fist or your thumb out, would the end of your thumb cover the disc? Was it that sort of size?
No, it was bigger than that. If I'd held the thumb, it would say. From the perspective, it would have been maybe about the size of an aircraft. Yeah. I mean, if you put your thumb up, you wouldn't cover an aircraft. Not one of the RAF bombers that used to come over.
So that's really close.
It was close, yeah. It was quite low because that's how the RAF bombers used to come over. It was about the same height as the RAF bombers.
So do you think that disc...
It was just, I'd say, just probably cloud sort of level, you know.
And was the disc going to and from anywhere?
Well, it seemed to be moving, but it was passing over our back garden. So, I mean... In
what direction? To or from on one of the bases?
Well, we at that time were living in Wainfleet, and I would say it was... You're asking now? It was coming in from Seaway. Yeah, I would say, yeah.
So it was coming from the sea.
I would say coming from sea direction, like
towards the base.
Well, the base is.
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, I don't know, because we lived in Lincolnshire at the time, so to be quite honest, I wouldn't be able to tell you where the nearest base was. There are a lot of bases in Lincolnshire.
Yeah.
I mean, I found out afterwards. I was not aware of this when I was a child growing up there, but I have found out afterwards. There's a lot of sightings in. And been a lot of instances with UFOs in the area where I grew up. They're a very regular.
Now, where do you get that information from? Or?
I actually started. There was the guy who actually suggested I spoke to you. He started sending me information over, and he was like, do you actually realise where you lived? It's like living in the British version of sort of like Nevada desert, because
Area
that's
51.
Yeah, Area 51 sort of stuff. Because say we're just up the road from where the British Roswell was.
Bentwaters,
Rendlesham, yeah, because that's in Norfolk area. So we're just across
Suffolk,
the wash, Norfolk Suffolk area. So we're across the wash from there. We've got RAF Coningsby.
Yes.
We've got just up the other side of Louth. We've got a massive, great big NATO base up there apparently, which I had no idea about. I do remember when I was a child growing up, one stage my grandmother bought us all pulsars because there was a lot of information coming out about these are crystalline, sort of artificial crystals in jewellery that were being released in the 1980s, because apparently Russia was supposed to be bombarding the Lincolnshire area with radio waves for mind control.
Right.
And then my grandmother was hearing all about this.
Was this actually so were these things designed to suck in the radio waves?
Yeah, like pulse, like the organ does now. Yeah. Yeah.
Now we're just. Do you want to just pick this up and refer to this? Because this.
Yeah. This is the real stuff. But,
this brings us into Matt Todd's the area of Matt Todd.
Hi, James. How you doing?
What about James?
Well, I've noticed that he's taken himself away from a lot of what he publicly went away with. I mean, I know he's just got married and whatnot. But,
Yeah. What do you think of that? Have you met?
Well, no, I haven't. All I can probably say on that matter is that it would help to keep him that close, if you know what I mean.
From Rome, but it's actually it's believed to be an old pagan walk. They call it the Milky Way. It's a power walk across northern Spain. I read about it in Paulo Coelho's book, The Pilgrimage, just after I arrived in Spain after having had a nervous breakdown. And I was so taken with this, as in I really believed it was some way of me helping to heal myself, that I did this walk with my mother and various other people, that I actually set out in military precision, that we had to be particular places at particular times. And lo and behold, my husband-to-be was walking those particular times in those particular places. And everywhere we went, we met up with him. And let's say within 2 weeks, he'd proposed to me. I fell head over heels in love. I thought that was it. Bang. And
so he swept you off your feet.
He did, yeah, absolutely. I thought that was great, and I was madly in love, or I thought I was madly in love. And in the September, that was in the May. In the September, I moved to Galicia.
Yeah.
There were things that weren't quite right, but I thought it was down to my own paranoia and fears, etc. And very controlling. He was extremely controlling, but not on what I did, but things. For instance, if I didn't drink my coffee, he would have a fit of me wasting coffee. You know, just stupid things, but very explosive. But I thought, well, he's Latin. Anyway,
did you blame it just on a Latin temperament?
Yeah, I blamed it on me and the Latin fear of military, of doctors, of dentists. Anybody in any form of uniform actually really does freak me out. I go into panics. I'm the sort of person who's terrified of needles. I hated guns, even though I can use a weapon myself. I was taught as a child to use a weapon.
You're talking about a gun?
Yeah.
A rifle?
Rifles, yeah. Well, air rifles, and because we used to live on a farm, and there was a guy who used to come hunting, and he taught me how to use the rifles and stuff. And my ex-husband actually taught me how to use.
And what sort of age was this?
8 or 9.
And was this? Were you living in the country at the time?
Yeah, in Lincolnshire.
Right.
Yeah, up in Lincolnshire.
So I mean, that's not unusual, is it?
I don't think everyone at the age of 8 or 9 actually uses air rifles and can shoot rabbits. But I mean, at the age of 9, 10, my brother and I had air pistols that we could use, and we were good shots. I mean, maybe it isn't. I've never thought about it, actually, you know.
But so, you stressed before we started that about the military connection.
Yeah.
So just bring us from there.
Yeah, with the marriage, yes. I met my husband through a series of coincidences in the year 2000. After the relationship was a whirlwind romance. Within 2 weeks, he had proposed to me.
What were the circumstances which you had...
Well, I was actually walking the Camino de Santiago, the pilgrimage across northern Spain.
Now, explain what that means to people who don't know what that
is. The pilgrimage is a path that actually apparently goes
Okay, Sam, welcome to the AMMACH project. My name is Miles. I'm standing in for Joanne Summerscales, who's away on assignment right now. So Sam has come down to the AMMACH facilities for telling us a series of stories which are very, very relevant to the kind of things which other people have been saying in the AMMACH and also the BASIS series of investigative reports. So Sam, can you introduce us to who you are and what brings you to the AMMACH project? Okay,
my name's Sam. Basically, a couple of years ago, I was speaking to somebody who actually recommended that I should speak to you regarding some experiences I had, well, been ongoing all my life, basically, but particularly in 8 years while I was married to a member of the Spanish military. During my investigations after my experiences during the temperament.
So it was your fault?
I thought it was my fault, yeah, because I felt that I was actually invading his space. It was quite strange. He was adamant that he wanted me there, but I always, in a way, felt that I was in his space. But anyway, then the bruises, and don't get me wrong, he was absolutely brilliant to me. Very, very beautiful, you know, but he had this very controlling side and very explosive nature. And it was at times.
Do you think that was just the Latin nature? I mean,
I'm not so sure now. No, I was at the time. At the time, I was thinking, well, it's got to be Latin nature. But it's the stupid things like he used to make a cafeteria coffee. What was left over used to go into a little jug, and then 2 or 3 days later, that jug would be boiled up in the morning for the coffee. Well, one morning there was actually mould on the top of it, and I refused to drink it, and he went absolutely, totally nuts about me wasting the coffee, and totally off the deep end. I was sat there thinking, this is really quite strange. And I ended up refusing to drink coffee anyway because I started getting heart palpitations and dizzy fits and stuff. And I assume
that's maybe too much caffeine.
That's it. I decided it was too much caffeine, so I decided not to have the coffee, so it wasn't an issue anymore. It just came to other parts of my diet. For instance, the fact I was vegetarian, I had a hard problem with that. But quite controlling. But I thought that, you know, he's military, Spanish, you know, that's the way it was. Anyway, I started waking up in the morning with little bruises, tops of my arms, tops of my legs, particularly on the right side. And I couldn't work it out. I knew it wasn't marriage. After the marriage, I was put in touch also with Matt Todd and James Casbolt. I haven't actually spoken face for James, but I have actually sort of spoken to him online and stuff.
Now, this is important because Matt Todd is probably the first one to come up in this general area as a super soldier and mind control and so forth. After, of course, the Barry King revelations all those 15, 17 years ago. So tell us more. Well,
with Matt, there's a friend of mine over in the Isle of Man who actually recommended me speaking to you, and also he actually put me in touch with Matt. He set up a meeting for me to go and see Matt. When I went to see Matt himself, I was going through a period of awareness that something had been very, very wrong. There was something that had been happening on a very quite violent level, but also a great deal of denial. So when I actually went to see Matt, it was a brilliant clarification for me, actually, that I wasn't going mad. And a lot of the experience I was having was, to be quite honest, I thought I was going nuts, totally and utterly nuts. I was.
Now, what kinds of experiences? Let's tie things down.
Well, it started off during the marriage. I started waking up with little bruises. I started.
Now, you were married to a military person. Man.
Now, this is strange. I was under the impression where I married him that he was an infantry sergeant, just a simple, little run-of-the-mill military guy, you know. I will say that I actually have, and I have had all my life, a great